Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Adel Hameed, the instructor of the course Introduction to Literature. So welcome today. As you know, last lecture we studied the first genre of literature, which is poetry. And today we will study the second genre of literature, which is fiction. So that starts. So the first, we need to know what's fiction. What's the definition of fiction? Fiction is defined as any narrative, especially in prose, about invented or imagined characters and actions. So it is any narrative, it's any story, especially in prose, written in prose, just talking about invented or imagined characters and action. This is the definition of fiction. First of all, if we would like to study any type of fiction, any type of story, so we need to know the elements of fiction. We need to study the main elements of fiction, the main elements of any story or novel in order to analyze it. So what are these elements? Let us see. We have 5 elements actually. First one is plot and setting, characters, point of view, theme. So in studying or analyzing any kind of story, any kind of fiction, we need to know these 5 elements first. And we will study them in detail one by one later on. So the first one, plot, everything that happens in the story, the sequence of events of the story, the characters, so the people, just or the creatures or animals of people in the story, the setting, talking about the time and place, the point of view, so the view from which the story is told. And here we have what? The theme of it. So all these 5 elements, we need to study each one of them if we would like to analyze any story, any drama, any kind of fiction. So let us discuss these elements one by one. Let's start with the plot. So the first one is plot. What is plot? Plot is how the author arranges events to develop the basic idea. So it is the arrangement of events. It is the sequence of events. It is the sequence of events in the story. The plot is planned, logical series of events, having a beginning, middle, and end. The plot consists of 5 essential parts. So the first element is the plot. We can translate the plot in Arabic as الحبكة، حبكة القصة. وهذه الحبكة متكونة من 5 أجزاء. الحبكة تعرفها هي تسلسل الأحداث داخل القصة. وعادة ما تتكون من 5 أشياء كما نرى في هذا المخطط, as we will see here. So the first part, الجزء الأول, exposition, مقدمة, and rising action, تصاعد الأحداث, and the third one, climax, ذروة الأحداث, and then falling action, تنازل الأحداث, and then resolution, النهاية أو الحل. These are the 5 elements. We will study them in detail in the next slide. So here we have the parts of plot. So the plot consists of 5 essential parts. The first one is the exposition or introduction, المقدمة. So الجزء الأول من الحبكة هي المقدمة اللي نشوف بيها So beginning of the story, we can see characters, background, and setting revealed. وبهذا الجزء من الحبكة نتعرف على الشخصيات، خلفية الصراع والزمان والمكان. The second part of the plot is the rising action, تصاعد الأحداث. Events in the story become complicated. The conflict is revealed. There are events between the introduction and the climax. So هنا في هذا الجزء من الحبكة يتصاعد الأحداث وتتوضح حبكة الصراع بين الكاركترز الموجودين. So what is the conflict؟ ما هي الحبكة؟ So what's the definition of conflict? Conflict is essential to plot. Opposition ties incidents together and move the plot. وهي اللي تخلق الصراع أو تضاد الصراعات الموجودة في داخل الحبكة، وهي التي تحرك الحبكة، وهي مهمة جدا في تحريك الحبكة. الكونفليكت مثل سكة القطار التي تربط الأحداث. Conflict can be any form of struggle، ويمكن أن نعرفها أي نوع من أنواع الصراع. The main characters faces الذي يكون بين الشخصيات الرئيسية. And there are two types of conflicts. لدينا نوعين من أنواع الصراع. The first one, internal struggle within oneself. أول نوع من أنواع الصراع هو الصراع الداخلي اللي يكون صراع الإنسان مع نفسه، مثل characters with self, struggle with own soul, physical limitations, choices. صراع الإنسان مع خياراته، مع محدداته الجسدية إلى آخره. وهذا الصراع يكون مثلا صراع الإنسان بين الخير والشر، أنه يسرق أو لا يسرق، يعمل الأشياء الجيدة أو لا يعمل. This is internal conflict. هذا صراع داخلي. The second type، النوع الثاني، external conflict، الصراع الخارجي. Struggle with a force outside oneself، هو الصراع مع قوة خارج الإنسان. And we have here two subcategories. We have subtypes. عندنا أنواع فرعية من الصراع الخارجي. The first type، character with character, struggle against other people، هو صراع شخصية ضد شخصية أخرى. Second، character with nature, struggle against animals, weather, environments. صراع مع الطبيعة، مثل صراع مع حيوانات، مع طقس، مع بيئة معينة، كأنه يكون مثلا شخص في الشخصية رئيسية في القصة تكون في داخل غابة وتواجه مخاطر الطبيعة وغيرها. هذا يكون character with nature. The second type of conflict، النوع الآخر من أنواع الصراع الخارجي، character with society, struggle against ideas and practices or customs. الصراع ضد الأفكار، يعني صراع بين الشخص والمجتمع، بين التقاليد، الأعراف. هذا هي قلنا أجزاء الحبكة. The first type exposition، المقدمة. The second type rising action، تصاعد الأحداث. واللي تصاعد الأحداث هناك أحداث بين الرايزنج أكشن وبين الكلايمكس اللي تتوضح بيها الكونفليكت، ويعرفنا شنو الكونفليكت وأنواعها. نأتي إلى الجزء الثالث ب part of plot. It is the climax. It is the turning point of the story. Readers wonder what will happen next. Will the conflict be resolved or not? And part number 4, the falling action. Resolution begins. Events and complications start to fall into place. They are the events between climax and the noise. The last part, number 5, is the resolution, in which we have the final outcome of the event in the story. This is the first element of fiction, which is a plot. This is the first element of fiction. And this is the same diagram we have seen before. The second element of fiction is the setting. The setting, الزمان والمكان. So let us see what is setting. Setting is the time and location in which the story takes place. الزمان والمكان التي حدثت به أحداث القصة. It's created by language, how many or how few details we learn it up to the author. Many authors have a lot of these details up to the reader's imagination. Some or all of these aspects of setting should be considered when examining the story. So when we would like to examine the setting of the story, we need to take these items into consideration. The first one is the place. The place is the geographical location where the action of the story takes place. The second item is the time when the story is taking place, historical period, for example, in 1991, in 2021, in 1720, for example. So the period of time, the year. And C, weather conditions. So what kind of weather in the story? It's rainy, sunny, stormy, etc. And D, we need to consider the social condition. So what kind of social conditions we have in the story? What is the daily life of the character's life? Does the story contain local color? Writing that focus on the speech, the dress, manners, customs, whether the people inside the story, whether they are rich or poor, they are prince or queens, the princesses or poor people, for example. And in analyzing the setting, we need to see the mood or the atmosphere. What kind of feeling is created at the beginning of the story? Is it bright and cheerful or dark and frightening? So here, the impression we can take in reading the story. So in analyzing the second element of fiction, which is the setting, we need to take all these items into consideration. So let us move to the third, and here example also, another example. Sorry. So we have example of the setting here. The setting is the place where the story takes place. Setting includes the following: the geographical location, for example, Wyoming, London, Cairo, Vancouver. Here we have places, for example. And the time period, for example, 1865, during the World War II, today, tomorrow. So, and socioeconomic characteristics of the location, for example, whether the people wealthy sectors, depression, dust bowl, or so whether poor areas or rich areas. And then we need to see the specific building, room, and so forth. For example, a school, a log cabin, a bus, military base. So what kind of place we have in the story? So number 3, the elements of fiction. The third element of fiction is characters. Characters. And characters, so in characters here, characters can be defined as any person here, any person, animal, or figure. So the character could be person, animal, or figure or a figure. So الشخصية قد يكون شخص، وقد يكون الشخصية الموجودة بالقصة حيوان أو شكل ما أو هيئة ما، قد يكون وحش أو شخصية أسطورية and so on. So represented in literary work. So where we can find them? We can find them in literary work. There are many types of characters that exist in literature. So we have many types, each with its own development and function. So you can usually detect some or all of these types. So we have two main types of characters. Major characters, شخصيات رئيسية, and minor characters, شخصيات ثانوية. So you see here, so the characters either people, animals, or figures, for example, here. So let us see. So as we mentioned, the third element of fiction is the characters, and we have two kinds of characters, and each one of them also subdivided into other kinds of characters, as we will see next. So major characters. So what's the definition of major characters? So there are most important characters in the story. There are two types, of which there are maybe a couple of each. بالشخصيات الرئيسية عندنا نوعين. عندنا protagonist, بطل القصة. This is the main character around which the whole story revolves. The decisions made by this character will be affected by a conflict from within or externally through another character or nature, technology, society, or the fates of God. So here the protagonist, الشخصية الرئيسية, البطل. And the second one is the antagonist, البطل المناور, يعني عدو البطل. We can't translate into Arabic. غريم البطل, الغريم. This character or group of characters causes the conflict for the protagonist. So this man here causing the conflict to that man there. However, the antagonist could be the protagonist who is torn by a problem within itself. For example, could be, but it's the person working against the hero here. So, for example, here we have two cartoon characters. One of them is protagonist, and he's the main character. The hero or the good guy or girl has the problem that needs to be solved. So here is the protagonist. He's the main hero. Mostly he's kind, he's good, the protagonist. And we have another character which is working against him, antagonist. The main character's enemy. So it's the character, the protagonist enemy, the main character's enemy, the villain or the bad guy. So here we have the good and we have the bad. So stands in the way of protagonist solving the problem. So the protagonist would like to solve the problem, but the character here is working against him, preventing him, stopping him from doing his goal. So minor characters. So as we mentioned, we have the third one is the character, and we have two kinds of characters: main characters, and here, major characters here, and we have minor characters, الشخصيات الثانوية. So these are the other characters in the story. There are not there are not as important as the major characters, but still play a large part in the story. Their actions help to drive the story forward. Major characters will usually be more dynamic, changing and growing through the story, while minor characters may be more static. So you see here, for example, uh, this is the main character, which all the problem, all the story is about him, and we have sub characters, but the minor characters. So you see here, just the people surrounding the main character, working to help him or to help the story to be driven, to be going forward. So here the main characters and the minor characters, people around him, and they are not playing a great role in the story. So we will continue studying. This lecture will be continued for the second time, the second uh, part of the lecture. And by now, I would like to say thank you very much indeed for listening. Thank you very much, and take care and stay home. Thank you very much indeed.